Thank you, Melissa. And it's hard to follow Melissa because she's so enthusiastic. And she mentioned a lot of things that we have been interacting with her on. And I was there at the beginning with her when she started the Kidney Health Initiative. And I must say, the Kidney Health Initiative has been a source for us to do outreach at the FDA way beyond what we've ever thought we would really do. And especially in this kidney community. So I want to thank her, and we can talk a little bit more about some of the projects that go forward, but it really has spurred on a lot of different projects and initiatives that we've been doing. And also, I thank you to Paul and Richard for inviting the FDA to come here. I'm here from the Center for Devices and Radiological Health, not the Center for Drugs or Biologics. I can try to speak to them if you have questions, but from the Center from Devices and Radiological Health, we've done a lot of these projects with KHI, and I think they're things that we would like to share a little bit with you. So who is the FDA? What is our center? So CDRH stands for the Center of Devices and Radiological Health, and our mission is here to protect and promote public health. And how do we do that? We do that with patients in the center of everything. Patients and their healthcare providers we're here to assure that they are provided timely and well thought out medical products that can go on the market. We make sure you have the educational information about these new products that go out there. And we also, on our promote side, is to promote and facilitate the development of new innovative devices and make sure that we move forward as we go throughout development. And we do this with a benefit-risk assessment of our devices in mind, which means that we don't always have to prove that a device works beyond all measures that you could do. We're there to say we need reasonable assurance of the safety and effectiveness of a medical device, and that's balanced by the needs and the benefits that it can provide. And we live by that philosophy more and more. The other thing that's very important for us is to talk about our CDRH mission. Okay, so the vision. The vision is for patients in the United States to have access to high quality, safe and effective medical devices of public health importance first in the world. And we never lived by that philosophy before, but we've really started to do it in the last 10 years. We're trying to move a lot of trials that first start out in Europe and come to the United States. And I think with many of the initiatives, the innovative initiatives I'll talk about today, you'll see in what areas we are starting to do that. So I'm going to talk about these various things that are on this slide, the innovation pathway, our breakthrough products, some of our outreach with the KHI that's already been mentioned, our patient engagement, real-world evidence and how we're using it, and then a few other innovative processes. So when we think about the development of new medical devices and innovation, we think of different phases of a product's life cycle that we must go through in order to add something to the process to get new devices out on the market quickly, but also make sure they're safe and effective. We either look at the preclinical area, we look at the clinical studies, we could look at the pre-market areas, or we could look in the post-market field. And we do this, I'm going to now go through some of our innovative processes that we're doing so that you can see how we can enhance this process. Okay, so the first one I'm going to talk about are breakthrough devices. And somebody put these slides together in a way that is very difficult to operate. I'm sorry. Okay, so back in 2011, our center decided to start a new initiative. We brought a lot of entrepreneurs and residents from the outside into the FDA, and at that time, they were looking at our processes, and they weren't the greatest. This isn't even 10 years ago. This was just 8 years ago. And they said, you could do better, FDA. You're just not moving things, especially the Center for Devices. You weren't moving things out properly. So they started targeting areas, and one of the areas they targeted was renal. And so they asked us what we thought we should do with renal, and we said, we need pediatric devices in renal. And they said, that's nice, but you need a lot more than that. They said, we want to start an innovative process to get new devices out across the entire renal field. So we put out a call for innovative products. We got 32 applications. We thought we would get 2. We got 32. And then we had to decide between these 32 which 3 we would move forward. So the whole plan was we would take certain medical devices, we would work very interactively with these companies, and we would see how we could move those products forward, what kind of incremental steps we could make to either get them on the market or move them into another phase of development so they could move quickly. The 3 products that were chosen, one was a vascular access device, one was the wearable miniaturized dialysis system that you wear around your waist, and the third was the kidney project that you already heard about today, the implantable kidney. So those were our starting points, and what we did with these companies, we worked extremely interactively, and as we worked with them, we met with them on a regular basis. We talked about all incremental steps. If they had questions about I want to do something with fluid dynamics. Can I meet with some people at the FDA to talk about what kind of in vitro studies I would need to start that? Do I need animal studies for this, or can I move right into a clinical study? Those, questions like of that nature. And we did. We met with them day after day on phone, we sort of set a priority. And I think it did move some of those projects forward a little bit, but we could only do that for so long. And so then the FDA came in and said, okay, now we want to expand that process of what we called breakthrough or early access type of interactions, and we'd like to move it into the broader FDA community. And so they did in 2015. They came in and they started this program called the Expedited Access Process, or pre-market process, and other devices started, companies in other fields, the cardiovascular areas, the ophthalmology area, different areas started working with them. We had a guidance, and then Congress found out this was a really wonderful idea, and they went and added in the 21st Century Cures a definition for breakthrough devices. It's a little slightly different from what we were defining it, but it is for innovative devices, and I'd like to talk about that for a second. And we have since also prepared a guidance document based on the 21st Century Cures law and moving our breakthrough process, which was called Early Access EAP, into this terminology now called breakthrough. And I must say that once I go through this, I will tell you that our office, our center, has 83 different breakthrough products currently under review, which is quite a few, and we started out with 3 basically at the beginning. So the first thing in order to be a breakthrough device, medical device, is you must prove that you provide a more effective treatment or diagnosis of a life-threatening or irreversible debilitating human disease or condition. It's got to be sort of a breakthrough thought process. And then you have to meet only one of the following 4. You must prove that it represents breakthrough technology, so something new that hasn't been out there. Or you must show that there are no approved alternatives, or either approved or cleared, because we have a 510K process for alternatives. So there's nothing out there. So a good example would be cancer. I've tried everything, all the drugs. There's nothing left in this particular field. There's nothing else. I need this. And then the next thing, or, these are all ors, or that you offer a significant advantage over existing approved or cleared alternatives. And it goes on to a few other things. But basically, the last one is, or the availability of these products would be in the best interest of patients. So it's pretty flexible. If you can meet one, most likely you can meet one of the other 4. But we do try to be selective, because if everybody went in this program, we couldn't help everybody to the same extent that we have started out with the first 2 projects we had. My branch particularly, I'm the Renal Devices and Transplantation branch. We have about 5 or 6 of these breakthrough products underway right now. I can't tell you what they are, except for the first 2, because that was made very public, the implantable kidney and the wearable kidney. But the others are a fairly broad range of products that we are currently reviewing. Okay. So what does the breakthrough get you? It gives you interactive and timely communication, and as much interaction as we can. We talk to you between submissions. We talk to companies during submissions. Our review team is constantly there for support, and we get our senior managers to help engage a lot. So if they don't hear from us, they call our bosses, and we're pretty used to that now. That gets prioritized review when the submissions come in. There's enhanced opportunities. We think about pre to post market shift. Some of you may have heard about that. It is an option if something is considered scientifically appropriate. and defining scientifically appropriate is currently underway. But we do sort of look to make sure there's a benefit-risk balance and we have enough safety on a device to know whether we can move into a post-market area. We're pretty flexible in how we deal with the clinical trials, and we try to work as efficiently as we can. And we like to reduce the manufacturing information as much as possible. We're in a new program now of working post-market and pre-market, working a little bit closer together. And there are some projects underway to try to reduce manufacturing. Not reduce it so much as if you do a good job and you set it up ahead of time, there might not be as much oversight on a regular basis for it. And then we do a lot of collaboration on the data development plan, which would be, where am I going? I'm starting here with nothing, a prototype, and I'm going to get to humans. What might be that particular path I have to go through? And not just from like you're going to be a PMA or a 510K or de novo or whatever, a little bit more about what might be the major hurdles I have to overcome. So we spend a lot of time talking about that. Okay, so I'm going to move on to a slightly different topic now because I don't want to run out of time. Collaborations with the Kidney Health Initiative. And as you heard, we started a lot of projects with the KHI in 2012. I found that a fascinating project to do with them. And as I said earlier, we are now doing a lot more outreach because of that interaction. Melissa mentioned a couple projects. I want to go into a little more detail on some outcomes of some of those. But just at the bottom of this slide, you'll see some that we have done. One of them is called Standardized Pharmaceutical Assessments in Patients Receiving CRT. That was a drugs-related project, because drugs does projects in this. And the one thing I just want to make sure I emphasize that Melissa said, make sure you all understand, those are stakeholders of all varieties are on those committees. Every committee has somebody from a different aspect of life in product development, including the patients, including industry academics, and no one group pushes a project through. And it's got various government people on those projects. And that makes them sort of a fair assessment of what's going on within that particular area. We worked on a barriers to innovation paper. I've heard that mentioned earlier today, and that helped to identify some big hurdles KHI has to overcome as we move forward in projects. We had the Patient Preference Initiative that Melissa talked about, the Clinical Trials Development Vascular Access. Recently, we finished a project called the Unmet Needs for Hemodiafiltration. Basically, it was looking at online hemodiafiltration in the United States, where there's only one product on the market that does online hemodiafiltration. For those people that know a lot about that, it's supposed to do better clearances of your toxins. We've always been concerned in those products about sterility and keeping the solution sterile, because large volumes of solution get injected into a patient. So these are products that are taking water that you make in the clinic, adding the dialysate, sterilizing it right in the machine, and at point of care, injecting those fluids back into patients. And we've been overly cautious about this. Industry said, you've been overly cautious about this. So we started a project, lots and lots of debate, and this was an international project because a lot of online hemodiafiltration is done in Europe and other countries. So we said, well, they wanted to bring their knowledge into that discussion. With a lot of discussions, we ended up with a couple publications. One was more of the clinical side of why it's beneficial, and the second paper, which FDA is also on, was what are sort of the regulatory considerations. I mean, we have guidance documents. They're a little bit old, the guidance documents. We're having a little trouble getting a permission to upgrade them. We thought this would be a mode to actually talk about what we require in these areas, not setting any brand new limits, but explaining what we have and why we think people haven't been moving forward with the development of online hemodiafiltration systems. So that's one of those kind of outreach things that we think is very important and that KHI helps us bring to the table. The roadmap. Okay, the roadmap is very complex. As Melissa said, it is supposed to be the technology roadmap to help the KidneyX project, and it is aimed at the first phase of KidneyX, which is the new design dialysis. And there are many goals for this project. The main one is to spur innovation. So the roadmap provides a framework for the overall development of innovative renal replacement therapies to be proposed by the industry and moving products forward that will be to improve the quality of life of patients. So that was sort of a mouthful. That was the goal. And it's not going to tell you everything you have to do. It's basically going to give you ideas on how to move forward and help KidneyX with making milestones for how they are going to milestones they'll set when they give out their prizes. It hopefully will attract more industry. Hopefully they'll come up with more money to attract more industry, but that is the goal, that it will attract more industry into it. We want to encourage an international involvement with this development of the new innovative technologies, because some of these technologies are moving forward in other countries. We want to ensure that patients and care partners are at that table, are incorporating their thoughts and what they think should be developed and not develop things that shouldn't be. And then we want to optimize the whole process regarding reimbursement. We're trying to move that forward, and hopefully our next speakers can talk a little bit to innovation that's happening at CMS. The key strengths of the roadmap are patient-centered focus, as I've said, opportunities for multidisciplinary collaboration, so many people getting involved, multiple solutions, so it will be things that you can get on the market now, things you can get onto the market later, whether it's a whole product or part of a product. You can move these technologies out so they can be used for other things, especially when you start collaborating. If you make a sensor, that sensor can be used on some other fancy new machine that will help detect something. And I'm very excited about hearing different diagnostic tests, because these diagnostic tests can help with the further development of the treatment therapy devices. And then common design requirements. We're going to try to identify some of those between the products. So if you're going to develop a sensor, someone else is going to do the same kind of testing on the sensor unless it's used for a totally different use. We're looking at quality of life improvement for patients. We ask the patients first. Here are a lot of the things that they want. Patients, and I want to say not just patients, these are people that live with kidney disease. And there are many of us that do many other things, but they live with kidney disease, and these are the things they want to do. They're things that are very normal. They want to travel. They want to be able to go out and work and carry on a normal life. They want to have a normal diet, or at least a liberalized diet that gives them less fluid regulation. They want to reduce diseases and treatments that are complications with their current kidney disease. They want to reduce financial impact on their day-to-day lives and to minimize the intrusion of the therapy on their families and on their social life. There are a few other things on this, but that is sort of the overall arching goal of trying to have a technology roadmap that will help us. We're trying to develop common design requirements, and we're basing these on, right now, 4 different primary areas that we're looking at. We want to look at the kidney's function. If we don't maintain the kidney's function, and the 4 main areas we're sort of looking at in that is to maintain electrolyte hemostasis. We want to make sure that fluid regulation is being evaluated, removal of toxins, another major kidney function, and we want to make sure that we filtrate, transport, and drain whatever we take out and move around. So keeping those in mind, we then move into what technological types of things we would need to do that, and what is the impact on patients as we go forward. This is a 30-page document, as you heard, and it's pretty complex, but what it leads us to is the things that impact innovation and ways to get there, keeping in mind that we're basing it on kidney function, but there are what we call system enablers. You have to have a biomaterial in order to develop this we'll say dialyzer, or this new membrane. You have to have monitors. You have to have vascular access. You have to have other things that will help you develop whatever you're developing. And the third part is you need the support from both the FDA, the regulators, financial people, and the other innovators to help you. So those are sort of the big things. This slide was just sort of taking an example of fluid regulation and saying what might be the time frame. So we would look for sensors to detect fluids in the intravascular volume status early on, maybe by 2022, and then all the way down to having and developing an integrated system to see sensor input to adjust fluid removal as part of a closed-loop system, being a long-range type of project. And there will be phases along the way, and this document will help to spell out some of those things so that maybe KidneyX can use those as goals when someone comes in and says, I'm going to develop a project, and this is where my project's going to end for now until I move into a collaboration with another group. So that's sort of what we're looking at. It's a little complex, and I don't know if it helped you at all, but if you read the document, and we will make sure you get that document, you'll see that it's going to hopefully move a lot of things forward. Okay, moving on to the next thing very quickly before I run out of time. We're very focused on patients at the FDA. So this is back to some of our other innovations. We do a partnering with a patients program. We have programs that are helping to develop patient-reported outcomes for clinical trials. And we also have patient preference information studies. I'm going to give you an example of one that was very successful. And we also have at FDA a patient engagement advisory committee, of which Paul Conway is the chair. So he is very active to make sure kidney patients are included in that whole process. So we keep reaching out to try to do more and more for patients, because I think we do believe that is our focus. Okay, so at the patient preference workshop that we had, besides being totally overwhelmed by the fact that we had no idea how much patients could help us. And at that particular meeting, we really opened our eyes a lot to the interactions and how patients and people living with various disease, kidney disease, could come to the table to engage with us. And at the end of the meeting, I had one company walk up to me. It was Next Stage Medical, who's a home dialysis system. We've already approved them for home dialysis. And between them and on the other side are patients standing next to me, and they're going, "We want the label on the dialysis machine to say that I can dialyze at home by myself without a partner. And you have made Next Stage put on their label that they have to have a partner." And yes, we did make Next Stage put on their label that they have to have a partner. Because we felt, even though their device has a lot of safety features built in, we felt that if something goes wrong, somebody should be there. And so the patients were telling me that you have restricted me. You are not allowing me to dialyze by myself and travel, take my machine and go somewhere if I am by myself. So they said, "What can we do about it?" And Next Stage looked at me and said, "Maybe if we did a patient preference study." We just had a whole discussion on patient preferences and what they might mean. And we said, "Yeah, great idea." So they did. It took us a couple years, but we actually did it. And this is just to tell you, they came in, their device was originally cleared without a partner. The care partner was originally considered necessary. So we then set up a patient preference study to measure a patient's maximum acceptable risk for hemodialysis without a partner if they weren't going to do in-center dialysis. So how is this patient preference study designed? It was unclear what the benefits and risk trade-offs were going to be for hemodialysis at home without a partner. So it was designed around that. There was originally an instrument pretest for an online survey about how you would conduct the treatment in patients. Then we did a threshold techniques type of patient preference analysis, and it was used to identify the risk tolerance of death and needle dislodgement associated with home hemodialysis when you don't have a partner compared to what it would be in-center. So what's your chance of dying, and your access falling out, maybe you're bleeding to death? How much risk is a patient willing to take? And at the end of that, we realized that patients were willing to tolerate a certain level of risk, even of death, in order to be able to dialyze at home. And so combining the safety features that Next Stage had already on their system, and they're continuing to add more as time goes on, with the fact that patients were very willing to accept a certain risk, we changed their labeling in a marketing submission, and they now can use it without a partner. And I think that's going to help a lot of patients with their doctors who don't want to send them home. We're trying to encourage people to go home and do dialysis if they're capable and willing to do that. And we did receive a very nice email from somebody after this. This individual was here earlier. I don't see her now. But it was a nice email, so I just want to read it. She said, "Imagine my surprise yesterday morning when I opened my email to see a press release announcing the FDA approval for the Next Stage solo treatments. I am so grateful to you and the FDA for listening to our pleas and responding to such a timely fashion. This will open many doors for dialyzers who want to be the benefits of home dialysis, but have been denied access for a lack of care partner. The response to our groups has been overwhelming in support of this approval. Thank you for listening and working to improve the lives of patients who dialyze. We appreciate it more than you can ever know." That was very meaningful to me. And when people say, how do you measure the impact, that's a way that I measure the impact of something we do. And I thank the company for pushing through. I thank the patients for being persistent and using their voices to say this was something important. I thank those who participated in this outreach program, and it allowed some change to occur. And I'm probably running out of time, but I just want to mention a couple more innovative technologies. One other device project that we have is a real-world evidence project. We have a new guidance document out which talks about how do we use real-world evidence when devices are already on the market, and or not, once they're out there. And so we have a new guidance document that's out on this. And one of the things that it does, it helps, an example of how this could be used, and it was used, is to expand the indications for use for a product once it's out there. And so recently we cleared a new indication for a device that had already been on the market. This is a cap on a hemodialysis catheter. It's called from Pursuit Vascular, and that cap has in it chlorhexidine acetate, and it's coated on a little rod. Well, they had originally come in and gotten a clearance, and all we would give them was, you can prevent colonization of bacteria on that little rod. That's it. I mean, it kind of spelled out what in vitro type tests they did, but it was a limited amount of testing to get the device on the market. So they came back and they gave us a lot of data collected in a real-world environment from a variety of dialysis clinics. And they actually did a study. It wasn't, unfortunately, they didn't come to talk to us ahead of time because it would have been a little better study. But after a lot of interaction with them, with many types of what we call pre-submission interactions, we finally worked out with them that we cleared this for a reduction in the incidence of central line associated bloodstream infections. And this is, I think, one of the first products that we've put out like this. We couldn't go for the higher bar of catheter-related bloodstream infections, but I think this is a good example of how we've tried to encourage people to use the data that's already out there and build new types of indications or things that they can now market their devices for. And hopefully that will feed back to helping other people do more innovative type processes with their products. And just to end up, we have a number of other processes and new programs at the FDA. I can't go into them really too much. We have early feasibility studies where you can talk to us very, very early. We're working on our post-market balance. There's some new guidances on that. We're always there to provide regulatory assistance. We have a pre-submission process where people can come in and talk to us as often as they want about phases of their product development. We also have a parallel review program with CMS, and I don't know if it'll be mentioned by our CMS colleagues who will talk. We have also a payer communication task force where we're trying to reach out to our CMS partners to try to, when you have a clinical study, you can maybe use the clinical study to for both reimbursement, payment, whatever those categories are called, and the scientific needs of the FDA. Even though we have different missions, there are sometimes clinical studies that can be developed that will help for both. The other thing, besides the private or the public CMS, this program also includes private payers. So we do have private payers come in, private organizations that are paying for clinical health. And you can a company can come and meet with us, with whoever they want to bring, but with the payer at the table, and we can talk about clinical trial design together. So those are new programs that we have put out there to increase innovation in the medical device space. And to us, the keys to success for innovation are having informational meetings, pre-submission meetings. Informational is just tell us what your product is, and we can hear about it. We'll start thinking about it. Pre-submission is we can answer whatever questions you like. Come very often, and we will do that. It's free. You don't pay for that. Interactive review processes when we're reviewing submissions to allow the devices to go through quickly. We have post-decision conference calls helping to assess where they can go next. And then submission issue meetings are when we're stuck in the middle of a problem with a device during the review. A company can come in and talk to us right then and there to work through the issues. How do we get there in the future to innovate new devices? We have to be more flexible. We're trying to be flexible when it comes to the pre to post market shift. We're trying to be flexible in accepting a certain level of uncertainty. I'm not sure everybody at FDA likes the term uncertainty, but it is in our vocabulary. There are guidance documents coming out on it, and we are starting to live a little more uncertainty as we get new devices on the market. We like to innovate. We look for new innovative designs. We look for real-world evidence. We look for patient perspectives to help us guide that. And we have interactions, collaborations, and prioritization for getting interactions with companies, keeping those interactions going, getting senior management involved, and maximizing the predictability so you know where to go with the different products as they go forward. So I'm sorry it took a little long, but that is a lot of our innovative work that we're doing right now, and we hope to continue. Thank you. And now have CMS come up and tell us all about how they're going to work with us.